Hello everyone, EB the Original Master here, and welcome to my review of Season 10 of SpongeBob SquarePants. So, before I begin, Season 10 is not actually over yet. In fact, there's only 2 more episodes left until the season is over, which is Fertile Friends and Don't Wait Patrick. So when those episodes comes out, I will have to review those, and I will not make another video regarding to this one because I've already done it. So as for right now, I'm only reviewing the episodes that are currently were released. And without said, let's begin. Episode 205A, Whirly Brains. SpongeBob and Patrick buy the Whirly Brain toy where they can fly their brains through the air. So, this episode, the first episode of season 10, I give this episode a meh rating. Is because that none of the jokes were funny. Most of them were fart gags and pointless scenes of SpongeBob and Patrick playing with the Whirly Brains. But there were some pretty cool Easter eggs, such as the hedges that formed SpongeBob and Patrick in it. If you guys don't know what that is, I'll show that to you guys after this review of Whirly Brains I'm in. Another problem with this episode is that there really wasn't that great jokes. It was very boring. There were some hits and miss of scenes, but this whole episode really wasn't my favorite. So I'll have to give this a meh rating. So yes, Whirly Brains is not my favorite episode. And season 10 actually started off with a weakness of a meh rating because I didn't like this episode at all. So yeah. Episode 205B, Mermaid Pants. SpongeBob and Patrick have fun playing Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, and Mr. Krabs and Squidward decide to play along as the bad guys. Guys, I'm very sorry, but you have to hear me out. I did not like Mermaid Pants, not one bit. It's everything wrong as a Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episode. I mean, yeah, I know Ernest Borgnine died and everything, and I know that this is supposed to be like a tribute to his death, but seriously, they could have did something way more unique than this episode. I mean, my major problem with this episode is that Mr. Krabs and Squidward playing as the villains. Remember in the episode Super Friends, aka I think Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 4, is when everyone played as superheroes like Mr. Krabs, SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy, and even Mermaid Man himself, and Barnacle Boy was on the dark side. That was a good episode. That episode was a lot better than Mermaid Pants. I'm sorry, you guys. I did not like Mermaid Pants at all. That's why I give this a bad rating of an episode, is because that it's not funny at the slightest. The fact that they used the Krusty Krab as the evil secret headquarters made absolutely no sense. Nickelodeon could have expanded this episode if they at least threw some of the villains from the Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy series. I know Man Ray is going to be returning in season 11, but they could have at least threw in like one cameo appearance of either the Dirty Bubble or Man Ray. Only a cameo appearance. Just something like 1 second, and then that will probably make the episode even good. But I'm sorry, you guys. I did not like Mermaid Pants at all. It was very boring. It was pointless to have Mr. Krabs and Squidward as the villains, and Squidward's name to be Dr. Negative. That's what this episode gets. It gets so much negativity because this episode is not one of my favorites. Episode 206A, Unreal Estate. SpongeBob fears that he's allergic to his pineapple house, and Squidward offers to help him find a new home and trouble ensures. So, Unreal Estate was an okay episode. This episode wasn't neither great or boring, but there were some moments that were actually pretty okay. It's not a great episode, but it's just okay. My favorite moments of this episode was the SpongeBob parody theme song of the banana, chili, and gyro. There were some moments that I really didn't like SpongeBob torturing Squidward by being childish and stupid, but that's SpongeBob's behavior, and we already know that. I didn't like SpongeBob's behavior in this episode. I thought they made SpongeBob way too stupid to Squidward, but other than that, this episode was just okay. I didn't like the fact that Squidward had to use pepper as an excuse to make SpongeBob allergic to his house. They could have done something way creative. At first, I thought there was something in SpongeBob's house that he thought he was allergic to. Like, there was like something like algae or something that he's allergic to, or there's probably some mold in his pineapple. If it was mold, that would have kind of made sense, because you could be allergic to that. But no, it was just Squidward infesting his house with pepper, which I didn't like at all. But overall, this is just an okay episode. Not a great episode, but just okay. Episode 206B, Code Yellow. Squidward plans to get a nose job at the hospital, and SpongeBob decides to tag along. So Code Yellow was another okay episode. My only issue with this episode that this episode has so many gross outs, it's not even funny. I mean, the first gross out was Squidward's nose, as you see in the image down below. I mean, it's disgusting. And the worst part is that they actually animated, like, I don't know, like the pores popping and everything. That was disgusting. And SpongeBob performing the surgery on Squidward's nose, where he like sliced him up as sushi. That was pretty dark. And they used the fact that he used one of his tentacles as like a Krabby Patty or something. That was really disgusting. But overall, this was actually an okay episode. I did like some of the jokes of this episode were pretty great. Again, this is another SpongeBob episode where he was very dumb and acting childish as ever. Again, that's another reason why I didn't like this episode. I mean, I didn't like it because of that. It was a good episode, but that was the only moment that I didn't like of this episode was SpongeBob being very, very childish. Look, I know SpongeBob is supposed to be childish, but he has never been that childish. I mean, it's very stupid that the fact that this guy has to be that childish, but I'm not going to let that affect me. But yeah, Code Yellow is an okay episode. Not great, but just okay. Yeah, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's the truth. Episode 207A, Mimic Madness. SpongeBob learns that imitation is the synchronous form of flattery. So, this episode was actually good. This episode was very good, that I have to explain you why it was good. SpongeBob is the master of mimicking. He nails at his friends so good, it just puts me to wonder this guy could be a good comedian one day. But Mr. Krabs warns SpongeBob that he has the bad case of the mocking mimicry madness. I'm very sorry if I'm mispronouncing these words. No, it's not because I'm mispronouncing it, it's because I'm talking so fast I end up screwing up the word. So I'm very sorry. But yeah, so then SpongeBob keeps mimicking his friends to a point where he doesn't know who he is. And the highlights of this episode was the Who Am I song. As you guys can see in the middle picture, that's SpongeBob performing the song in a cave. So yeah, this episode was pretty good. This was Sandy's second appearance of season 10. And then the next few episodes following this one, you will not be seeing her that often because, yes, Sandy does not make that many appearances in the season because Nickelodeon's like, all right, screw Sandy. Let's not add her in so many episodes. Let's just give her a break. But yeah, overall, this episode was pretty good. I love the song, Who Am I? I love the jokes. I love the fact that SpongeBob knows how to mimic his friends very good. But yeah, overall, this was a good episode. Episode 207B, Housewarming. When worms move into SpongeBob's holes, it's up to him to hide his disgusting new friends from everyone else. So, Housewarming was a meh episode because there really wasn't that much great moments of it. All it was just SpongeBob trying to hide his worm friends from everybody else, where everyone thinks that the worms are disgusting and whatnot. The only good thing about this whole episode was the worms having a dance party in SpongeBob's holes at the beginning of the episode. And if you guys don't know that the Speed Freak song, I actually looked it up. It is not actually a song from the SpongeBob soundtrack. It was actually from a group, from a band group. So it's not an original song from the show, and I thought that was very disappointing. But yeah, the song was still catchy though. And on the picture on the far right, the third image that I found, the worms kind of look like gummy worms. It looks like gummy worms have like attacked SpongeBob's and everything. But yeah, this episode was meh. And at the ending of the episode, we got a Looney Tunes style cartoon called Clam Up, which was the origin of how Prickles, the name of SpongeBob's worm that SpongeBob named, got into SpongeBob's holes to begin with. So technically, they wanted to show that cinematic last because they wanted to show us how it all began instead of just spoiling it at the beginning. Very sorry if I was stuttering. Again, I'm very sorry, but it doesn't matter. All it matters is that I'm reviewing these episodes for you. Episode 208B, Snooze You Lose. Squidward is so tired that SpongeBob and Patrick cannot wake him up, but they will not let him miss his big audition. So Snooze You Lose was actually a pretty funny episode, to be honest. My favorite moments is when SpongeBob and Patrick went into Squidward's body and used him as a puppet. And the next funny moment was his actual audition. What was funny about his audition is that Squidward was playing so terrible, it showed like real life events. Like it showed like realistic locations of these birds flying away, these buildings toppling over each other. And I thought that was pretty hilarious. And another thing that's hilarious is that if you look at the third picture I mean, not the third picture, the center picture of Patrick with the pillow in his mouth. I thought this picture right here was pretty funny, so I decided to add it to the screen. So yeah, Snoozy Lose was a good episode. Some people might think it was boring, but I thought this episode was pretty funny. So yes, I'll give Snoozy Lose a good rating. Episode 208B, Krusty Catering. Mr. Krabs and his crew cater a fancy party, but they might be out of their depth when their new wealthy customer. So Krusty Catering was actually a good episode, you guys. This episode had some really, really funny moments, and you can tell by the pictures that I found from the SpongeBob Wiki. So my very favorite moment for this episode, or my most favorite moment, has got to be the first image of this gallery that I found, of this one kid with this birthday hat just screaming. So yes, that was funny. And there's also a running gag in this episode where this kid is demanding for his birthday cake. That's like the running gag of this episode. That was pretty funny. And the fact that Patrick was attacking everyone, eating their food, that was funny. The face expressions are funny, very cartoony. But yeah, that's like my only issue with season 10. Season 10 is beyond cartoony. I mean, this is the most cartooniest I've ever seen of SpongeBob. So I think season 10 and season 11 is where Nickelodeon is expanding the cartooniness of these characters. Because in other seasons, they weren't this cartoony. But yeah, so Krusty Catering was a very good episode, and I highly recommend you watch it if you haven't seen it yet. Episode 209A, SpongeBob's Place. SpongeBob cooks at home, promoting Mr. Krabs' customers to leave his restaurant and head for SpongeBob's Place. Guys, this episode is not original, so it's bad. Bad episode. Not original, because it's already been done. Remember the episode Banned in Bikini Bottom? That fish was trying to ban the Krusty Krab, so everybody had to move to SpongeBob's house, and it replaced his house after Krusty Krab? Yeah, that's already been done. So, yeah, this episode was very bad. Mr. Krabs was unlikable, as always, because this is modern Season 10 SpongeBob. Nobody likes Mr. Krabs in Season 10 because he's very unlikable. He's selfish, he's greedy, all he cares about is money and customers. He doesn't care about anybody else but himself. Yeah, Squidward's I Hate People song was bad, not as good as SpongeBob's song, Who Am I, from Mimic Madness. This whole episode was very bad, not funny, and I highly recommend you guys to rewatch this episode and notice how bad it was. Not funny jokes, not funny plot, unoriginal plot, not great. I just hated this episode. I just don't like it. Episode 209B, Plankton Gets the Boot. Karen does not want Plankton to stay at the chum bucket anymore, leaving it up to SpongeBob to teach Plankton how to make it up to her. Jesus, Nickelodeon, really? This episode? You think the plot may sound kind of good about Karen like kicking Plankton out? It's almost like a divorce, kind of like so. But it was just a boring episode, man. I mean, it's not funny. It's just SpongeBob teaching Plankton how to be a nicer guy to Karen so he could live in the chum bucket forever. And then the whole ending was so pointless. If you're going to do an ending like that, then this whole episode should have gotten the boot of how bad it was. It wasn't funny to begin with. The ending was stupid. It was just a bad episode, not funny. So this episode gets a very terrible rating because it's not funny. You guys seen my review of Plankton Gets the Boot. I've told you guys it was bad, and I still agree it up to this day. Not funny. Highly recommend you not watch it because it's not worth watching it. Life insurance. SpongeBob and Patrick try to prove to Squidward that their life insurance protects them from any danger. So this episode was actually pretty good. I actually did love the plot. It was very real life, real logic episode about life insurance. But it all turned out to be that Mr. Krabs stated at the end that life insurance is basically stuff that you pay when someone dies in the family. So basically, SpongeBob and Patrick thought that life insurance will protect you from danger because they don't know anything about insurances, because they don't pay taxes or anything in their houses, so they don't know anything about this stuff. But yeah, this episode was really good. The only gag that I really didn't like was the sea spider thing. So when Squidward saw his piece of hair, or SpongeBob and Patrick saw Squidward's piece of hair, they thought it was a sea spider, so they started stepping on it, and that was pretty unnecessary. But overall, this episode was pretty good. Episode 210B, Burst Your Bubble. SpongeBob blows himself a bubble boat. Everyone else in town wants one. So, out of all the boating school episodes that I've seen so far, I think this was one of my second favorites of this season, because my first favorite, we'll get to that later. But Burst Your Bubble had a unique concept of SpongeBob blowing a bubble boat, And what makes it unique is that Mrs. Puff is being taught by SpongeBob of how to ride one. Usually it's Mrs. Puff teaching SpongeBob how to drive, but that's the exact opposite in this episode, which makes it unique. And you already saw it coming. The highlights of this episode was gotta be Mr. Krabs' boat wash. Look at him. He's over here shaking that butt while listening to music while washing his car with Pearl's shorts. You thought I was going to say the A word, right? Yeah, I was about to say it, but I stopped myself from saying it. So don't try to get dirty with me. But yeah, this overall episode was good. Highly recommend you watch it if you haven't seen it yet. Very good episode. Very good jokes. Very good concept and story. But yeah, it was a pretty good episode overall. Episode 211A, Plankton retires. Plankton decides to close the chum bucket and move to a new town, but Mr. Krabs still suspects that he's up to something. Guys, this episode is very, very bad. And let's talk about some problems with this episode. First of all, the title card. It's basically Layman Fortune, but just inverted, meaning that they just swapped the colors around. Really? The second bad part about this episode is that the voice actor of Plankton written this episode, Mr. Lawrence. Really, dude? I love your portraying of Plankton, but why would you write this terrible, horrid of an episode? What makes you think you're going to write an episode about your character retiring, but he really didn't retire to begin with? Mr. Lawrence, this is your worst episode yet. I mean, it's very bad. I mean, I cannot believe it that you will write an episode like this, Mr. Lawrence. It's very sad that you're in an episode of Plankton leaving the chum bucket, but it turned out to be that it was just a fraud, meaning that the Plankton that retired was actually a robot. Predictable ending, very bad episode, not funny at all. Mr. Krabs' gotcha gag. Mr. Lawrence, why would you even written that? Seriously, what made Mr. Lawrence write Mr. Krabs' line to say gotcha, 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 gotcha? It's not funny, it's stupid. Man, screw this episode. Screw its inverted Layman Fortune title card, and it's just a very bad episode that should have never been mentioned. This episode is very bad. Trident Trouble, episode 211B. SpongeBob accidentally picks up King Neptune's magic trident. Alright, you guys, real talk. I really did not like Trident Trouble that much. I thought the plot was it was a unique plot, but the way how it was done was kind of boring. First of all, the Greek chorus is by far the most pathetic SpongeBob characters to ever exist. First of all, they look like freaking Shy Guy from the Mario games. Yes, I know I'm exposing them right now because that's what the frick they look like. Especially the first one. The first one looks like Shy Guy. And the whole point of this episode was very, very not funny at all. I thought SpongeBob using the trident was kind of magical and whatnot, but this whole episode was just not great. I mean, it could have been better if they had things to go with it, but having SpongeBob as like a Greek god was kind of alright, but this whole episode was just bad. There were some dark moments of this episode where the Krabby Patties were eating each other. That was pretty dark, and yeah, that was like the only dark moment of this episode. Overall, Trident Trouble was not a good episode, you guys. Another very bad King Neptune episode. Yes, this is King Neptune's only appearance in this season. He only appeared in this episode, and that was it. Pretty pointless. They could have used him for something better than that. Yeah, this is the King Neptune from the SpongeBob series, not the King Neptune from the SpongeBob movie. Talk about behold, we are the Greek chorus. We narrate this epic tale of stupidity. Just like this whole episode. Screw Trident Trouble. Not funny at all. The Incredible Shrinking Sponge, episode 212A. SpongeBob must figure out how to do his job after accidentally shrinking himself. So, the reason why the air date is TBA is because that it has not yet aired in the United States. It only aired in Russia. But in Russia, they actually have the English version of the episode. So, this episode was actually okay. If you're asking yourself, wait, if it's okay, how do you saw this episode if it has not yet aired in the US? Well, Squidward with Hair provided the link of this episode in English, but since it's a Google Drive, sometimes when you click on the link, it's not there anymore. So I think Squidward with Hair needs to find a better way of posting these episodes because Google Drive will not work that well anymore because every time you click on the link, it will say it's not there. But yeah, I did see this episode when he had the link available, and the episode was just okay. It wasn't boring, but it was just okay, meaning that I wish there were moments that could have been better. But I did like the fact to see that SpongeBob is microscopic size, to see the many things that he could do while that size. Well, yeah, that's all I have to say about this episode. It was just okay, and I wish things could have been a little bit better. Sports, episode 212B. Squidward invents new sports to get back at SpongeBob and Patrick for annoying him. So, before I begin, you guys, in my original review of sports, I said this episode was pretty good. But after going back to watching some clips of it, uploaded from Tom the Chocolate Guy, who is no longer on YouTube, and Squidward with hair, this episode was just okay by just looking at the clips again. The reason why I say okay is because that after watching it for the first time and remembering the events that happened, it really wasn't that much going on. All it was just Squidward torturing SpongeBob and Patrick because that the sports that they were playing weren't played properly, and then when Squidward went up against Sandy, Squidward did absolutely nothing. All he did was kept constantly getting beaten by Sandy, not even trying. So that was another reason why I had to change my rating, because I've just noticed stuff like that, and I was like, wait a minute, Squidward did absolutely nothing. So how can it be good if there was like no competition involved in it? And the biggest mystery was, why did Sandy bought sporting equipment? That was the biggest mystery of this whole episode. So it wasn't bad, but it was just okay. I'm so glad I went back to see clips of this because I had to change my rating. Because after seeing everything that happened, Squidward did jack nothing. All he did was kept getting lost by these games, not trying not one bit, which made me kind of disappointing. So yeah, this episode is no longer good. It's just okay. I was gonna put meh, but there was really nothing boring about it. It was an okay episode. I mean, it was good that they made an episode about sports, but after watching about it and watching the clips again on YouTube, I had to change my rating right away. The Getaway, episode 213A. When SpongeBob mistakes an escaped convict for his new driving instructor, it's the new teacher who learns a lesson. Guys, you've guys seen my review of this episode, The Getaway, back in June 10th, and I told you guys that this is my favorite episode of the 10th season. It's so great. The whole concept is so creative. The whole jokes were on par. This episode was beyond my favorite of this entire season. Well, let's hope when Don't Wake Patrick and Fertile Friends come out. But as for now, The Getaway is my number one favorite episode of the season. I love the jokes. I like the Easter egg of Kaz, the writer of this episode, smacking Sticky Fins in the face. And I just loved the whole quirky cartooniness of this episode. It was all types of good. This episode was action-packed. It was like almost like Fast and Furious, but SpongeBob-ish. And everything about this episode was just amazing. So there's nothing I can complain about. Very good episode. Highly recommend you watch it if you haven't seen it. But yeah, hands down, favorite episode of this whole season. Lost and Found, episode 213B. Mr. Krabs sends SpongeBob in search of a missing toy, and SpongeBob finds himself lost in the Lost and Found. Lost and Found was an okay episode, you guys. I actually did love the scenery of the Lost and Found, a very dark room with all these shelves and things that are lost that needs to be found. And yeah, it was a pretty cool concept, but the only biggest issue of this entire episode is the first image you see is that annoying kid. He cries like half of this episode, which really bugs me. I mean, seriously, Nickelodeon, I understand that you're supposed to be making episodes like these, but it's very unnecessary to have this kid crying throughout the episode. It was very bad. It was very annoying, but overall, this episode was just okay. That was the only problem that I had with this episode was that kid. But I did love the scenes of SpongeBob in the Lost and Found, and I also liked Squidward's flashback of him playing the kazoo as a kid, shown on the third picture. But yeah, this episode was okay. Could have been better if that kid wasn't crying throughout the episode. But yeah, unique concept, but overall it was just an okay episode. Patrick's Coupon, episode 214A. When Patrick finds out that his free ice cream coupon is expired, he has to go to the Ice Cream King for a chance to get a free ice cream regardless of his expiration. I'm sorry. Yeah, Patrick's Coupon was a good episode. The reason why I say it was good is because that there were some really good moments. Like, I love the fact that the ice cream parlor that Patrick went to kind of had like a Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory vibe from the colorfulness and the ice creams and everything. And this episode is beyond cartoony. Another funny moment of this episode was the ice cream Ninjago thing from Patrick and the Ice Cream King, which is pretty hilarious. As you see, the third image that you see, Patrick's a chocolate ice cream while the Ice Cream King is strawberry ice cream. My biggest pet peeve of this episode was people were kept talking about that the Ice Cream King sounded like Uncle Grandpa, rather than the fact that he looks like one of Patrick's ancestors or one of his family members. It could be an ancestor of Patrick, like a starfish species, but everybody keeps talking about the way how the Ice Cream King sounds. Oh my god, the Ice Cream King sounds like Uncle Grandpa. Man, who cares? Like, honestly, I don't care about that. Why should everybody else care about it? I mean, that's like the only thing that they talk about this episode is the Ice Cream King sounding like Uncle Grandpa. It's because he's played by the same voice actor. Overall, this episode was good. I love the story. I love the fact that Patrick was being very kind to SpongeBob for giving him free ice cream. But the sea spider joke has returned from life insurance, which made it kind of bad. But that's the only thing that I only had a problem with. But other than that, this whole episode was good. Episode 214B, Out of the Picture. Mr. Krabs buys Squidward's art, but he has to get the artist out of the picture to make profit. Guys, I know in my original review of this that I put this as an okay or good episode, but this episode was bad. Mr. Krabs was so unlikable. And if you guys don't know about this episode was actually a very dark episode. The reason why it's dark is because that Mr. Krabs wants Squidward dead. And the artist actually did a very, very dark moment. When he said out of the picture, he imagined himself hanging himself with a noose. That's telling you right there that this is a dark episode. And I think from the word out of the picture, I think that basically means a dark saying or a phrase. I'm not sure if that's a phrase or a saying. But after seeing the scene of the artist fish trying to pretend to hang himself from a noose, that lets you know that this is a dark episode. The only good thing about this episode was Rock Bottom. That's it. Rock Bottom's appearance was the only good thing about this episode. Other than that, it was bad. It was crap. Mr. Krabs was very unlikable. He was very, very greedy in this episode. All he cares about is money, 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 as always. I don't know why Mr. Krabs has changed this way, but overall, this episode was bad. Only good things was the Rock Bottom appearance and this very cartoony scream of this baby. That was it. Other than that, this episode was very bad because of how unlockable Mr. Krabs was. Alright everyone, here's my tally of all of the season 10 episodes that I reviewed so far. So far, I've ranked 7 good episodes, 5 okay episodes, 1 meh episode, and 6 bad episodes. So those are my final ratings as for now. And when For Real Friends and Don't Wait Patrick comes out, I can be able to tally those up to see if that will rank up either as good, okay, meh, or bad. But as for now, thank you so much for watching my season 10 episode review of SpongeBob SquarePants. I'll see you guys next time. Sayonara.